Welcome to an unprecedented look at our legal system. What you are about to witness is completely unfiltered and unedited. Prepare yourself for raw, authentic footage captured directly from the front lines of justice, where truth is the only objective.
Reeve Samuels?
Yes, sir, that's me.
We're looking into a robbery last night over on Pratt Street. Armed suspect.
I was home last night, officer. I didn't leave the house after dinner.
We're going to need to take a look around.
You have a warrant?
You match the description. That's probable cause. That's enough.
I want it on record that I did not give consent to
Officer Brian Tackett pulled up to Reeves Auto Works on Delmar Avenue with his mind already made up. He told the mechanic he fit the description, accused him of hiding a weapon on the premises, and warned him that resisting would only make things worse. Officer Tackett didn't know was that one phone call from that mechanic was about to bring someone into that parking lot who had ended careers before and was about to do it again. Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where you're tuning in from. If you believe that a badge should never be used as a weapon against innocent people, then hit the like and subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. This is Bodycam Revealed, where the camera doesn't lie, even when people do. It was a Tuesday morning in early October, and Delmar Avenue in Baltimore, Maryland was already moving. The auto shops, the corner stores, and the small businesses that lined that stretch of road had been open since 8, and the sound of air compressors and morning traffic filled the block the way it always did on a workday. At 4417 Delmar Avenue, the bay doors of Reeves Auto Works were rolled all the way up, and the man who owned the place was already 2 hours deep into his morning. Reeves Samuels was 41 years old, and he had spent the better part of his adult life learning how engines worked. He had started as a teenager helping his uncle at a small repair shop in West Baltimore, first sweeping floors and handing tools, then learning diagnostics, then working on transmissions and electrical systems until the knowledge became second nature. By the time he was 26, he had his certifications, his business license, and a lease on a bay space on Delmar Avenue that he eventually turned into his own shop. Reeves Auto Works had been operating for 9 years by the time that Tuesday morning arrived. And in those 9 years, Reeves had built the kind of reputation that brought customers back and sent new ones through the door by word of mouth alone. He was known for being straight with people. He told you what was wrong, told you what it would cost, and did the work he said he would do. In a business where trust was everything, that counted for a lot. That morning, he had 3 vehicles on his schedule. A 2017 Honda Accord belonging to a regular customer named Gerald Okafor needed a transmission flush and a coolant top-off. A 2019 Ford F-150 was in for brake pad replacement and a rotor check. And a 2020 Chevy Malibu had been dropped off the evening before with an electrical fault that was causing the dashboard warning lights to behave erratically. Reeves had already pulled the Accord onto the first lift and was running through his initial checks when his shop assistant, a 23-year-old named Dion, arrived and started prepping the second bay for the F-150. Gerald Okafor was in the small waiting area near the front of the shop, a plastic chair and a coffee table with some old magazines, drinking from a paper cup he had brought from the carryout 2 doors down. He and Reeves had been exchanging small talk about the previous weekend's football scores while Reeves worked, the kind of easy conversation that happens between 2 people who have known each other long enough to skip the formalities. The morning felt ordinary because it was ordinary. Nothing about it suggested that the next several hours were going to permanently change the way Reeves Samuels thought about what it meant to own a business and be a black man in America at the same time. The 2 patrol cars pulled into the lot at 9:22 in the morning. Officer Curtis Ware stepped out of the first car before it had fully stopped moving, and the way he moved toward the open bay doors was not the way someone moves when they are coming to ask questions. It was the way someone moves when they have already formed a conclusion and are arriving to confirm it. He was a 12-year veteran of the Baltimore City Police Department, broad-shouldered and deliberate, and the expression on his face when he walked through the bay doors was not neutral. His partner, Officer Halloran, came in behind him and positioned himself near the entrance without saying anything, the way a second officer does when the first one is about to take the lead on something. Reeves noticed them the moment they walked in. He set down the diagnostic tool he was holding and turned to face them, wiping his hands on the cloth he kept tucked in his back pocket. He said good morning. Ware did not return it. "You Reeves Samuels?" Ware asked. Reeves told him he was. Ware looked him over in a way that was slow and deliberate, taking in his height, his build, his face, the grease on his forearms, as if he were running a comparison in his head. Then he said, "We're looking into a robbery that happened last night over on Pratt Street, convenience store, armed suspect." He paused for a moment. "You matched the description." Reeves kept his expression steady. He asked what description. Ware told him black male, medium build, dark clothing. He said it like those three things were enough to walk into a man's place of business on a Tuesday morning and start an interrogation. Reeves told him calmly that he had been home the previous night, that he hadn't left his house after dinner, and that he had nothing to do with any robbery. He said it clearly and without rushing, the way a man talks when he knows the truth is on his side and is trying to make that obvious. Ware didn't move. He looked around the shop slowly, his eyes moving across the tool chests, the supply shelves, the lifts, the back office door. "We're going to need to take a look around," he said. Reeves asked him if he had a warrant. Ware looked at him for a moment and then said they didn't need one if there was probable cause, and that matching a robbery description on a street where the incident occurred nearby was probable cause enough. It wasn't a legal argument. It was an assertion delivered with enough confidence to sound like one, and it was aimed at a man Ware had clearly decided would not push back. Gerald Okafor had gone quiet in the waiting area. Dayon had stopped moving in the second bay. The shop, which had been filled with the sounds of a normal working morning 2 minutes earlier, had gone still in the way that spaces go still when everyone present understands that something serious is unfolding, and no one is sure yet how far it will go. Reeves told Officer Ware again, clearly and directly, that he had not committed any crime, that his shop was his private property, and that he was asking to see a warrant before anyone searched anything. He was not aggressive when he said it. He was not loud. But he was firm, and firmness was apparently something Officer Ware had not expected, because his expression shifted slightly, and he took a half step forward. "I'm going to need you to step to the side," Ware said. "And I'm going to need your assistant to stop what he's doing and come stand over here." He said it the way people say things when they want the weight of authority to substitute for the weight of evidence. And in that moment, standing in his own shop on a Tuesday morning with customers watching and no warrant in sight, Reeves Samuels understood exactly what kind of morning this had become. The search had already begun before Reeves Samuels fully understood what was happening. Officer Curtis Ware moved through Reeves Auto Works like he had a map of the place, pulling open cabinet doors, crouching to look under lifts, and running his flashlight along shelves that held nothing but motor oil, brake fluid, and the kind of organized clutter that comes with running a legitimate shop for years. His partner, Officer Halloran, stayed near the front, arms folded, watching Reeves the way you watch someone you've already decided is guilty. Neither of them had shown a warrant. Neither of them had explained what specific weapon they were looking for, or what evidence connected Reeves to the robbery at all. They had walked in with an accusation, and now they were treating it like a conviction. Reeves stood near his tool chest with his hands visible, because he knew enough about moments like this to know that where your hands are matters. He had not raised his voice. He had not made any sudden movements. He had done everything right, and it wasn't making any difference. A customer named Gerald, who had dropped off a 2017 Honda Accord that morning for a transmission flush, stood near the waiting area with his car keys still in his hand, not sure whether to stay or leave. 2 other vehicles sat on the lifts, half finished, their owners expecting to hear from Reeves by early afternoon. None of that was going to happen on schedule now. "You said you were home last night," Ware said, coming back toward the front of the shop with his flashlight still on. "You got anybody who can confirm that?" Reeves told him yes. His wife had been home with him. They had eaten dinner, watched television, and gone to bed before 11. He gave Ware the information calmly and clearly, the way you answer a question you have nothing to hide from. Ware nodded slowly, the way people do when they've already decided not to believe you. He wrote something in his notepad and then looked around the shop again as if the answer he wanted was hiding somewhere between the tire racks and the hydraulic lift controls. "We're going to need to keep looking," he said. It wasn't a request. Halloran moved toward the back office, a small room off the main floor where Reeves kept his invoices, a desktop computer, a mini fridge, and a row of binders that held years of business records. Reeves told him that was his private office. Halloran looked at him for a moment and then walked in anyway. Reeves felt something tighten in his chest. Not panic, but the specific kind of anger that comes when you know exactly what is happening to you, and you also know that losing your composure will only make it worse. Outside, a car slowed down on Delmar Avenue, the driver looking through the open bay doors at the two patrol cars parked at angles in the lot, in a neighborhood where people knew each other's businesses. Sometimes literally. Word traveled fast. Reeves had built his reputation at that shop over 9 years. He had sponsored a youth football team 2 years running. He had given jobs to 3 young men from the neighborhood who needed a second chance. All of that meant nothing to Officer Ware, who was now asking him whether the tools on his workbench were all accounted for. "What does that mean?" Reeves asked. "Accounted for how?" Ware pointed at a heavy torque wrench hanging on the pegboard above the main workstation. "That's a serious piece of equipment," he said. "You keep inventory of everything in here?" Reeves told him every tool in that shop was purchased, logged, and used for the job it was made for. He told him that if a torque wrench counted as suspicious, then every mechanic in the state of Maryland was a suspect. He kept his voice flat when he said it, but the meaning landed and both of them knew it. Ware didn't respond to that. He just kept moving. By this point, Reeves had been detained for close to 40 minutes. He hadn't been placed in the patrol car, but Halloran had made it clear he wasn't free to move around his own shop, wasn't free to speak to his customers, and wasn't free to make any calls without letting them know first. Gerald had eventually left on foot, leaving his Accord behind. The 2 other customers whose vehicles were on the lifts had not been reached yet, and their jobs were sitting unfinished in a shop that was now a search scene. Reeves looked at Halloran and asked him plainly whether he was under arrest. Halloran said he wasn't under arrest, but that he needed to stay cooperative. Reeves asked him what the difference was between being detained without arrest and being held against his will. Halloran told him not to make things complicated. That was the moment Reeves Samuels decided to make the call. He told them he needed to contact his wife, and before either officer could frame a reason why he shouldn't, he had already dialed. The phone rang twice. Wynette picked up on the second ring, and Reeves kept his voice steady when he spoke. He told her where he was, told her what was happening, and told her to come to the shop. He didn't use the word emergency. He didn't need to. Wynette Samuels had been a civil rights and criminal defense attorney for 11 years, and the way her husband said they're searching the shop without a warrant told her everything she needed to know. She said she was on her way. Ware had heard the call. He hadn't tried to stop it, but his expression shifted slightly when Reeves mentioned the warrant, like the word had registered somewhere uncomfortable. He went back to searching, this time moving toward the supply shelves along the east wall where Reeves kept bulk fluids and boxed parts waiting for upcoming jobs. He pulled a few boxes forward, looked behind them, and found nothing because there was nothing to find. Halloran came out of the back office and gave Ware a small shake of his head. Also nothing. The shop was clean. It had always been clean, but neither officer said that out loud. What they did instead was continue. Ware asked Reeves again about his movements the previous night, this time in more detail, asking about specific times and whether he had left the house at any point after 9. Reeves answered every question the same way he had answered the first ones, directly and without hesitation. Because the story didn't change when the truth was the truth. He had been home. He had not left. He had not robbed anyone. He did not own a firearm. He had told them all of this already. 47 minutes into the search, with nothing found and no warrant ever produced, Reeves Samuels stood in the middle of his own shop and waited. Customers had seen what was happening. The neighborhood had seen it. His name and his business were sitting in the middle of something built entirely on the wrong description, and an officer who had decided that close enough was good enough. Then a silver Audi A6 turned off Delmar Avenue and pulled into the lot. Wynette Samuels stepped out, smoothed her blazer, and walked toward the open bay doors without slowing down. Samuels did not run. That was the first thing anyone watching would have noticed. She pulled into the lot of Reeves Auto Works, stepped out of her silver Audi A6, and walked toward those open bay doors at a pace that was unhurried and completely deliberate. She was dressed in a charcoal gray blazer over a white blouse, her natural hair pulled back, a leather portfolio tucked under her left arm. She looked like exactly what she was, the woman who had walked into difficult rooms for 11 years and had never once left one without getting what she came for. She stepped through the bay doors, took one look at her husband standing to the side of his own shop with Officer Halloran positioned nearby, and then turned her attention to Officer Curtis Ware. "Who is the ranking officer on this call?" she asked. Ware told her he was leading the investigation. Wynette nodded once. "Then you're the one I need to speak with." She set her portfolio on the edge of Reeves' workbench without asking permission, opened it, and pulled out a legal notepad. "I'm going to need your badge number, your partner's badge number, the case number attached to the robbery report you're investigating, and I need to see the warrant authorizing this search." Ware looked at her the way people look at something they weren't prepared for. "Ma'am, this is an active investigation." "I know what it is," Wynette said. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "My name is Wynette Samuels. I am a licensed attorney in the state of Maryland with 11 years of practice in civil rights and criminal defense law. The man you have detained without arrest in his own place of business is my husband. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Where is the warrant?" The shop was completely silent. Dayon had not moved from the second bay. Gerald Okafor was still in the waiting area, and he was no longer pretending to look at anything else. Ware and Wynette stood 6 feet apart, and the distance between them felt like the distance between two completely different versions of how this morning was going to end. Ware told her they were operating under probable cause and that a warrant wasn't required under the circumstances. Wynette wrote something on her notepad. "What specific circumstances establish probable cause?" she asked. "I want the exact language you're using because I want to make sure I document it correctly." Ware said her husband matched the description of the robbery suspect. "What description?" Wynette asked. Ware said black male, medium build, dark clothing. Wynette stopped writing and looked up at him. "That is the description?" She said it slowly, letting each word sit in the air on its own. "That is the description you used to enter this building, detain my husband, and conduct a warrantless search of his private business property." Ware said it was consistent with the report. "I want to see the report," Wynette said. Ware told her the report was part of an active investigation and wasn't available for her to review on scene. Wynette looked at him for a long moment. Then she took her phone out of her blazer pocket and made a call. She didn't step away to make it. She stood right where she was, in the middle of the shop floor, and when the call connected, she identified herself by name and bar number and asked for a supervisor to be dispatched to 4417 Delmar Avenue immediately. She gave the badge number she had already written down. She used the word warrantless twice and the phrase civil rights violation once, and she said all of it in the same flat, composed tone she had used since she walked through the door. She hung up and looked at Ware. "A supervisor is on the way," she said. "In the meantime, this search stops right now. If your partner is in that back office, he needs to come out. If anything in this shop has been moved or tampered with, I need to know about it before that supervisor arrives." Ware didn't respond immediately, but he looked toward the back office and gave Halloran a short nod. Halloran came out and stood near the front without saying anything. Sergeant Aldridge Haropusek arrived 14 minutes later. He was a 20-year veteran, and he walked into Reeves Auto Works with the particular energy of a man who had received an earful on the way over and was hoping the situation was less serious than it sounded. It was not. Wynette met him at the bay doors and handed him a handwritten summary of everything that had occurred since the officers arrived, including times, statements, and the specific constitutional provisions she believed had been violated. Harwick took it, read it without rushing, and then asked Ware to walk him through the original call. Ware pulled up the robbery report on his phone and read from it. Harwick listened. Then he looked up. "What's the suspect height in the report?" Ware looked at the screen. 5'10", he said. Harwick looked at Reeves Samuels, who was standing near his tool chest where he had been standing for the better part of an hour. "What's your height?" he asked. Reeves told him 6'2". Harwick looked back at Ware. "What's the suspect weight?" Ware looked at the screen again. 160. Everyone in that shop could see that Reeves Samuels was not 160 pounds. He was a broad-shouldered, 200-pound man who had been doing physical labor for 20 years. The numbers didn't come close. The description didn't come close. And standing in the middle of Reeves Auto Works with the report open in front of him, Sergeant Harwick had no choice but to confront the fact that Officer Curtis Ware had walked into this building with nothing that legally justified it. Harwick closed the report. He looked at Ware for a moment with an expression that was not anger, but something quieter and more final than anger. Then he turned to Reeves. "Mr. Samuels," he said, "you are free to go. You are not a suspect. This search is over." Reeves didn't say anything right away. He looked at his shop. The open cabinet doors, the pulled forward supply boxes, the back office that a stranger had walked through without permission. And then he looked at his wife. Wynette was already writing again. Ware stood near the bay doors with his arms at his sides and said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The report had said what it said. The numbers had said what they said. And the body cam clipped to his chest had recorded every second of all of it. Reeves Samuels walked back to his workbench, picked up his diagnostic tool, and went back to work. The body cam footage was pulled that same afternoon. Sergeant Harwick filed an internal report before he left the parking lot of Reeves Auto Works, and by the time he got back to the district, the footage from both Officer Ware's and Officer Halloran's cameras had been flagged for review. It wasn't a lengthy process. The footage was clear, the timeline was clear, and the gap between what the robbery report actually said and what Officer Ware had used it to justify was not something that could be explained away with paperwork or careful wording. 2 supervisors reviewed it that evening. A third reviewed it the following morning. By Wednesday afternoon, Officer Curtis Ware had been placed on administrative leave pending a formal internal affairs investigation. He was told to surrender his badge and his service weapon before he left the building. Halloran was placed on desk duty while investigators determined the extent of his involvement. He had not initiated the search, but he had participated in it, had entered the private office without a warrant, and had done nothing to stop a detention that had no legal foundation. In the eyes of the department's legal team, standing by while a constitutional violation unfolded was not a neutral act. His personnel file was opened and reviewed, and what investigators found there did not help him. There were 2 prior complaints against Halloran. One from a black business owner in the Edmondson Village area who said Halloran had entered his storage room without consent during a noise complaint call, and one from a young man in Cherry Hill who said Halloran had held him against a wall for 20 minutes without ever explaining why. Both complaints had been filed. Neither had resulted in disciplinary action. They were about to matter a great deal. Wynette Samuels filed the civil lawsuit 4 days after the incident. She did not outsource it. She did not hand it to a colleague or bring in outside counsel. She filed it herself because she had been in that shop. She had watched what happened to her husband with her own eyes, and she was not interested in telling the story secondhand. The suit named Officer Curtis Ware, Officer Halloran, and the Baltimore City Police Department as defendants. It cited an unlawful search and seizure in violation of the 4th Amendment, unlawful detention without probable cause, and a pattern of racially motivated policing supported by the prior complaints in Halloran's file, and a broader set of departmental data that Wynette's legal team had already begun pulling through public records requests. The filing was detailed, methodical, and devastating. The kind of legal document that told you immediately that the person who wrote it knew exactly what they were doing and had done it before. The lawsuit was filed on a Thursday. By Friday evening, the body cam footage had leaked. No one ever officially confirmed how it got out, but it moved fast once it did. A 17-second clip of Ware standing in the middle of Reeves Auto Works, pointing at a torque wrench on a pegboard and calling it suspicious, spread across social media before midnight. By Saturday morning, it had been viewed more than 4 million times. By Sunday, it was on national news. Anchors played it on loop, legal analysts picked apart every second of it, and comment sections filled with people who recognized exactly what they were watching. A man being treated like a criminal in his own business because of the color of his skin, and an officer who had never expected anyone to push back. Reeves Samuels did one interview. He sat down with a local Baltimore journalist on the following Tuesday, exactly 1 week after the morning it happened, and he spoke carefully and without drama. He said he had built his shop over 9 years. He said he had always believed that if you worked hard and stayed straight, things would work out. He said that Tuesday morning had not changed what he believed about hard work, but it had clarified some things for him about what black men in America were still up against regardless of what they built or owned or accomplished. He said his wife was handling the legal side, and that he trusted her completely. And then he went back to work because he had 2 vehicles that still needed to be finished and customers who were counting on him. The interview was calm. It went everywhere anyway. The department's response came 11 days after the incident. Facing mounting public pressure, a formal internal affairs finding, and an active federal civil rights inquiry that had been opened after Wynette's filing caught the attention of advocacy groups in Washington, the Baltimore City Police Department announced that Officer Curtis Ware had been terminated. The statement used words like conduct unbecoming and failure to meet constitutional standards, but it didn't use the word racism, and Wynette noted that publicly and on the record. She said the termination was a beginning, not a conclusion, and that the lawsuit would continue because firing one officer did not address the system that had trained him, supervised him, and looked the other way twice before when Halloran had done something similar. Halloran received a 30-day suspension and a formal reprimand. Wynette's legal team immediately added that outcome to the lawsuit as evidence of a department that still did not understand the seriousness of what had occurred. The case was still active when Reeves Auto Works celebrated its 10th anniversary on Delmar Avenue. Dayon baked a sheet cake. Gerald Okafor brought his Accord in for its next service and stayed for an hour talking. The bay doors were rolled all the way up, the way they always were on a good morning, and the sound of work filled the shop the same way it had always filled it. Steady and real and built by hand. Reeves Samuels had not stopped working on the day it happened. He had not We're going to spend a long time answering for it. The camera had recorded everything. It always does. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to see it. Every share puts this in front of someone who might never have known this kind of thing still happens in broad daylight on a Tuesday morning, in a man's own place of business. We tell these stories because silence never changed anything. Justice requires a witness. This is Bodycam Revealed, and we will keep watching. Like, subscribe, and share.
Welcome back. We are here to relentlessly pursue the truth and hold those in power accountable. Because while words can be twisted, the records simply do not lie. Thank you for joining us today.